Hello, everybody. This is Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast, here with my co-host, the multi-family mentor, the coach, the chef, the father of six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, we're doing great. How you doing, bro?
Always making it happen, big man. Today's guest is Michael Blank. Michael is an investor and coach who's passionate about helping others do their first apartment deal and get out of the rat race. He has raised over $1.6 million for house flips and apartment building syndications. He's the host of the popular podcast Apartment Building Investing with Michael Blank and writes regularly for Bigger Pockets and Flip Nerd. So I've also heard from Gino that Michael was a fellow pizza guy as well. So Michael, my big question is, what's this pizza/apartment investor connection that you and Gino got going on here? Because I'm not in that club. What's up with that?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it was a good idea for a time, right, Gino? And
Yes.
so really what it came out of is when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2004, he says you need a cash flow business in real estate. And I said, oh, I know, I'll just do both. And so I got into the restaurant business as a passive income vehicle. So just a background, I had made some money on a software IPO before, and I decided strategically to quit my plans of my own software company and plow my entire net worth into these pizza restaurants. And so that's what I did. And it worked well for a few years, but then it stopped working very well. And I'm in the process of extricating myself out of that. So
Was it franchise or?
franchise, yep.
Well, this is why I always like to focus on why did it stop working well? That's the first thing. I'll tell you my story real quick.
We gotta get the EOS going here, Gino.
Yeah. Why did it stop working well for you? And then that leads me up to how did you get into real estate, and why has real estate become so passionate for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's one of those things when you get into an investment, and this was passive, and I had an experienced multi-unit operator, and I was the money guy, and we were building, and so we had 6 restaurants at one time, and I had a 20-unit plan, so it all looked good on paper. The truth of the matter is, though, the concept really wasn't strong enough. So when the recession hit in 2007, the concept not only did it not recover, but the concept should have been adjusted to the new reality after the recession, where people really wanted value with the pizza. And I'm not a restaurant guy, right? I didn't really have any interest being a restaurant guy. And the lesson here really is if you're going to go so strategic in something as I did with restaurants, I mean, you got to go in there, and it can't be set up as a passive investment. I mean, you really got to get in there and make it work. Now, having said that, could I have made it work? Done that? I don't think so. And it's just because the concept is just not doing well on a national basis. And frankly, I don't think there's anything I could have done, except for the fact that I probably should have focused my entire net worth on real estate, apartment buildings instead. And what I did instead on real estate is I started flipping houses. And it was all for good reason, right? You do things for what you know. But there were certain misconceptions I had about apartment buildings that prevented me from pursuing that route. And had I instead of flipping houses, which was great, made me a bunch of money, it's fantastic, but there's no residual from that. There's no long-term wealth from that. And like I said, I was held back from apartment buildings because of some limiting beliefs that I know were actually myths, right? And I'm now on a mission to kind of tell people about that so that they maybe stop pursuing a strategy that won't get them to their end goal, which is maybe retirement or quitting their job or whatever their financial goals are. And so looking back on it, that's how I got started in real estate. It took me a while to figure out that I needed to adjust my strategy.
Mike, it's crazy you say that because I was an experienced real estate person, right? My father, I was started in the business when I was 8 years old, so I knew it. And I think that was my downfall because when you become an experienced at something, you don't look outside the box. You think you know what you're doing. You don't tend to grow, and you're like, I'm doing the same thing all the time. So I had that one operation I couldn't systematize. We did an EOS system. I didn't think about systems. I thought about going to work. It was a great job, made a ton of money the first 15 years. Then when the recession hit, everything shifted. And it's not about what's going on outside. It's about what's going on inside of me and my limiting beliefs also. And if I had really embraced, let me sit down and systematize it and think big and think long term and think to grow, I think I'd been in a different situation, been in a different business now. But knowing that, I'm glad that happened because I got into real estate and I get to talk to two guys like you. That's what happens in life. And I think that's the most important thing. I think when everyone thinks that they're really experienced and they're experts, quote unquote, they don't look outside the box. They tend to think they know everything, and they don't try something different, or they don't let other beliefs come into their mind, and then they just get clouded, and their judgment, I don't think is not that their judgment isn't great, but they just think they know it all, and they don't try anything new, if that makes any sense to you.
That's true. And the other thing in my case was complacency. Right? I grew very complacent with the restaurant business because it was going very well for a long time. Even the house flipping business was going very well. And I just read the 10X rule by Grant Cardone, and he's always like, man, you cannot stop hustling, right? There is no such thing as being successful and being in like resting. And that's kind of what I did, right? And it kind of bit me in the butt versus completely hustling and setting your sights. It's not that I wouldn't say it's a discontent that you're never happy with what you're getting, but it's a psychological thing where if you step away, bad things will happen, right? Complacency, and like you said, if you're too stuck in a rut, you're not open to new ideas and you're not actually growing. And it's all about, in my opinion, just growing. And I love learning. I love learning and doing new things. And when I stopped doing that, it's always gotten me in trouble.
And what happened in 2008, if you remember, all of a sudden the internet came online, and I had no systems for internet for the restaurant business, right? You have all these chains using Facebook for advertising. They're using all online payment systems, big websites. I didn't have any of that. So now that Jake and Gino comes along, we're using all those systems, but I didn't use that in my former business. So that's another thing as an operator, you have to constantly be educating yourself, like you said. Why don't you give us a little bit more of your background of real estate, how you started flipping houses and then transitioned over into the apartment side of it?
Yeah, I mean, so I decided I want to get into real estate. And I was like, what the heck am I going to do? I signed up with a local mentor, and his focus was wholesaling. And I was like, well, I'm just going to take what he teaches me, which is marketing and negotiating. I'm just going to take a step further and start flipping houses. So I flipped a few houses kind of like on the side because I was really right deep into the restaurants. I actually also then started getting started with apartment buildings. This was back in 2007. So I attended a boot camp and started sending out letters and calling brokers in Texas. This was at Texas at the time. And I really focused on this. I mean, I spent a lot of time as I probably analyzed 150 deals, and finally got an 82 unit under LOI, not on a contract. And I was like, if I do this, then I'm going to have to spend some time in Texas. I knew that, but I couldn't. I was like, I'm going to have to decide between these restaurants and either put that plan on hold or pursue that. But I already owned 2 restaurants at this point, and we're in the process of buying or building. I can't remember which it was. So I said, okay, I'm going to put that on hold. But I already got a taste for it, right? I was there. I learned so much and how to establish remote teams. I'm in Northern Virginia. This was Texas. How to do that. I started raising money for it unsuccessfully for that venture at the time. So I got the taste for it. I knew that eventually that's where I was going to go, but I had to focus on the restaurant stuff. So 2009 came around and things kind of stabilized on the restaurants a little bit. And I said, I'm going to get back in this house flipping thing. So, but this time I want to do it right. The only problem I had is I had none of my own money left. I deployed it all in the restaurants. I mean, there was literally all stuck in there. I had no more money to do anything with. And so I said, okay, I know. Well, let me talk to some people and see if they want to, lend me money. So some people were lending me money on these house flips, and I went after that very seriously and raised about $1 million+ for house flips. We were buying 2 houses at a time. So it was a pretty big operation. I had a project manager, an assistant, and that kind of stuff. And again, that was all great. In my mind, it was a massive opportunity cost of not actually redirecting all of that energy towards apartment buildings. And you kind of live and learn. And I eventually did get into apartment buildings in 2011. Bought my first 12-unit building in Washington D.C., which was a complete nightmare, and I immediately regretted the decision to get into multifamily. I thought I was going to lose the building. There was a tenant that made my life so difficult that it cost me tens of thousands of dollars to deal with it. And maybe you can relate. The good news about it is that deal. I mean, people talk about this. I talk to people all the time, and they're like, I can't believe all the things that went wrong with this one deal. It was like 10 deals in one. And so the good news about it is that it actually positioned me. After I've gone through a crap storm with this thing, it positioned me to help others basically avoid some of the mistakes, deal with difficult situations, and do these deals. And so, I'm grateful for that. But when you're going through it, you're like, man, I wish I could do without it. But it really kind of makes you stronger. And so that's how I got into it. And I've decided a few years ago that I want to teach other people how to raise money specifically, and really focus on multifamily as a preferred real estate strategy.
I want to mention the word focus. I'm a big Brian Tracy guy, and that word focus is what makes the successful person successful, because we know what to focus on. And it seems like you were doing what I was doing. We had both had pretty lucrative businesses, but we weren't focusing on what we really wanted. And I think that's the bridge. That's the gap that most guys, when they finally figured out, I want to do this. I even speak to Jake's story. He was W-2, but once he really focused on the real estate and said, I want to do this, that's when things take off. And I think when us as entrepreneurs, we want to do so many things going on. Like even right now, we're at the crossroads of our real estate. We've got going to have almost 800 units. Jake wants to start getting into building. So we might be able to get into building now because we've already done the multifamily. We've really mastered that aspect of it. And that's what I tell, guys who are getting into it, pick a niche, try to focus on one thing. If you want to fix and flip, focus on that, get strong on that, and then move on to something else. And it seems like you took off right after you said, I'm done with the restaurants, I got to focus on multifamily. So that's really important,
Yep.
You want to tell me a couple bad things that happened on that first deal? Because I can feel the energy. I can feel you just whole body.
I think we've all gone through that kind of that one problem person that's once we got past it, it kind of paved the way for the future. So yeah, I'd love to hear about that as well.
I've been told to stay out of Washington D.C. because the laws are so pro-tenant and anti-landlord. And I was like, how bad can it be? And this
it's that really bad, man.
It was, and even the guy who warned me goes, "Oh my gosh!" When I said that, I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. It was a professional tenant, and he knew how to work the system. He actually hadn't paid rent in 2 years, and he continued not paying rent for 2 years. And for some reason he had it out for me. I don't know exactly why, but he was calling every governmental agency in the city and outside the city, and it really cost a lot of money to be compliant, to pay the fines, to placate him, to just there's lead paint stuff or lead paint laws in DC are a new thing. No one really knows what they are, but make sure that you have to do stuff. So he did all these things, and I did have a reserve built in for this deal, but that reserve was dwindling very rapidly. And I also had the wrong property manager on the building who this was a little big for him. And it's a subsidized housing kind of neighborhood, and he was opposed to that, which also was so he couldn't deal with the situation. And now having to replace that property manager, which was also painful, it's like night and day, right? If you have the right property manager, everything is like night and day. They specialize in Section 8. They knew how to deal with tenants that are difficult. They knew the law better than the tenants did, and everything is just better. So literally, I mean, the lesson here is just the property management company is everything. If you have a poor property management company, your quality of life is going to be very low, and you will go, why? There's nothing passive about this. I might as well flip houses. On the other hand, when the property management company is very good, it's you still need to spend time on the asset. You can't go to sleep on it, but the time spent is probably 30, 60 minutes per week, if that. And that's the right thing, and that's something you can scale up. But when you have a poor property manager, that's something you can't scale. So that was a little bit something about that first deal.
Do you have any tips on how to find a good property manager? Because Jake and I, we're still self-managing, but we know what to look for as far as getting a property management company.
Yeah, I mean, there's questions you want to ask, of course, but really, I think the biggest thing for me is referrals, getting referrals from people. And talking to their customers, references essentially to see how they deal with things. So, but in general, the biggest thing for me is there's got to be a fit in the property manager. So, for example, this guy really had a more single-family houses and had some small multis. This was going to be the largest one. There wasn't really a match between what his business has been built up and what I was looking for. And match, for example, again, another mismatch was Section 8 management. Has he done that? No, he didn't like it. So there's a mismatch there. If you're doing a student housing thing, for example, there's a special kind of property manager that focuses on student housing. If you're doing a reposition or a heavy value add, there's property managers who specialize in turnaround projects, right? So you don't want to put someone who's good at managing a stable property and something like that. So a lot of it is a match, right? That's probably the biggest thing is figuring out what kind of properties that property manager is good at managing.
Can you highlight your investment strategy? I know you're a fellow BP blogger. I read all your articles on BP. They're awesome. I mean, guys, go on Bigger Pockets. Check his articles out. He writes a lot of great articles on there.
Well, investment strategy really is multifamily, right? And it's not just multifamily, but it's multifamily by raising money from others. And that, to me, now looking at it and now working with other students, really looking at what they want to accomplish financially with real estate. There is I'm finding very often there's a mismatch between strategy and goal, kind of like you and I talked about with whatever we decided to do, and it was a good idea at the time, but we weren't really clear about what we wanted and then matching that with a strategy. And so a lot of that is not being clear about what you want, and the other one is a bit of ignorance around what strategy to use. And I had a little bit of both. For example, if I want to create passive income, why in the world am I flipping houses, right? Yes, it's real estate. I can check the box, but it doesn't generate passive income. So why in the world am I flipping houses, right? Why would anybody want to flip houses when they want to build passive income? That doesn't make any sense. If someone tells me they want to quit their job in the next 5 years and they're landlording single-family houses, I'm like, how much passive income do you need? Oh, I probably need $7,000 a month. I said, are you aware how many single-family houses you would have to accumulate to generate $7,000 of passive income? They're like, no, I didn't even think about it. I said, well, why are you then buying 1 or 2 houses a year, which is awesome, right? Which is more than most everybody else. But why are you doing that? It's going to take you 20 years to get there. And that's what I'm saying. And the reason that people don't consider a strategy like multifamily, for example, everybody kind of goes, yes, passive income, check that. Real estate, yes, got it. Oh, you can you can achieve your goals faster. Yep, I get it. But, and then there's a but, right? The but is like, well, yeah, but I don't have the money. And you're like, yes, but you can raise it. And you're like, what do you mean you can raise it, right? They don't even know that it's what's possible, right? And this is what I'm saying is when you shift your mindset from what you think you know about something to what is actually possible, and with a little bit of education, a little bit of awareness, I have found you can shift people's minds. If I show them exactly the steps how to raise money, exactly the steps how to get into their first apartment building, their eyes kind of open and are like, okay, I still got to figure out the details, but I didn't know all these things. I mean, I didn't know this was impossible. And this is what I mean by shifting your mind, and that's what I'm really passionate about.
I like that. So what do you look in a deal? Specific debt service coverage, cash on cash, all those criteria, and like any value adds. What makes your juices flow?
It's a little difficult to answer simply, but the deal is driven by the returns for the investor, and I'm just making a fundamental assumption that you're going to use investors for it, and if not, that's great, you just make more money. But it's all driven by the returns, and it's really the average annual return. It's really the internal rate of return, but I don't want to bring that up because people glaze over. So it's the average annual return, and I found that if you can show people how they can make 13 to 15% average annual return with their money invested, you can get deals done. Now, you're not going to raise money from sophisticated angel-type investors because they're looking for 15 to 20%, but for the first several deals, you're not raising money from a sophisticated investor anyway, right? So if you have a deal that can demonstrate reasonably conservative generate 13 to 15% average annual return, those are the deals you can do. And everything else flows from that, right? So I can talk about cap rate and cash, but it's not as meaningful because it depends on the kind of deal you're doing. If you're doing a very stable deal, well, I'm going to want a certain high cash-on-cash return going in. But if I'm doing a value-add deal, there might not be very much cash-on-cash return anyway. And, in fact, I might actually want to overpay for a value-add deal and pay a 5 cap for a building that's half empty. And it violates all kinds of rules, right? So the cap rate and cash-on-cash return are loose guidelines for me. It's really driven by the overall return. And in order to do that, you need a strong financial model that shows you the overall annual return, which is composed of cash flow and amortization and profit and any kind of fees maybe you pay yourself. All that factors into the overall average return. But in general, okay, so you asked in general, upon stabilization, you want to have at least a 12% cash-on-cash return. Cap rate to me is again a little meaningless because it depends on how you're getting into a deal. I do stay away from negative cash flow situations. I think they're an advanced strategy. I'm not saying it's a bad strategy. You just have to make sure you know what you're going in. So if you're buying a half-empty building, you got to make sure you have a good plan and some reserves to get through that. So in general, negative cash flow is probably not a good idea for the first few deals.
I would say for the first few dozen deals. I mean, it's definitely an advanced strategy, and it's something that I've got caught. And you know what they're called? They're called alligators because they'll eat you alive. Because if you don't know what you're doing and you're playing with other people's money, that's one thing. If it's your own money on the table, that's one thing. I just feel really uncomfortable with negative cash flow deals because you really have to get that ball rolling. And if you make your projections and all of a sudden the market turns and you're pretty much, I would like to say the word screwed, you know? When you're talking about raising money, on your first couple of deals, who did you look to raise money? I mean, I like to call it the power base, as Grant Cardone says, friends, family, but where did you go to get your money in the first couple of deals?
Yeah, I mean, you have to start with your power base. I mean, that's what everybody kind of has. You have to look around and see who you know, and really the key is that you're talking to everyone you know. and you're not talking to them specifically about raising money, right? So you're not going to call your buddy down the street or your dad and go, hey, I'm doing this apartment building thing, or I'm looking for $100,000. Are you in? Yes or no? Right? They're going to go, no, right? So you're not going to do that. So raising money is really a form of networking. And when you speak to someone, really what you're trying to do is you're just trying to get their support on any kind of level, right? So what I really say is you want to get a series of yeses. And so to get a series of yeses, you're not going to ask for money right away. You're going to ask for a 5-minute phone call so that you can share how excited you are about what you're doing now. And a friend is going to take that phone call, right? Or a neighbor or whatever. They're going to say, yeah, sure, Michael, 5 minutes, sure. Yeah, we haven't caught up in a while. Tell me what's going on. And then you can share how excited you are. And that conversation could go in a variety of different ways. I mean, yes, you want to show them how they can support you. They can support you in a variety of ways. Maybe they're an experienced investor. They can maybe mentor you. Maybe they know brokers. Maybe they have contacts with attorneys. And then you eventually can ask them for money, but you also ask them for referrals. Many times the people in your inner sphere don't have the money, and you know this, right? You go into your brother who's broke, and so why am I going to ask him $100,000 when he knows he's broke? But he knows people, right? And so he may know his boss, for example, who is interested. Maybe he's got a real estate rental and he's looking to do more. So you're talking to everybody. You're not discriminating. You're looking for a series of yeses, and you're always looking for referrals. And as you're doing that, you want to expand that into other networking opportunities. That's where you go to RIA meetings, right? I mean, the room is full with real estate investors. And when I speak in RIAs, I ask how much money people kind of have roughly by a show of hands, and there's millions in the room, right? So there's already investors in the room that are interested in real estate, going to meetups, that kind of stuff, and simply just talking to everybody about what you're doing. So it's that kind of thing.
Jake and I use a credibility book to get in front of people and talk about, what do you use? I mean, how do you highlight your investment strategy to people?
Well, one of the biggest problems of raising money is a kind of a catch-22, and especially since I've gone through it, and now my students are going through it. They don't have a track record, right? So I can't. Mm-hmm. I don't have a portfolio because I haven't done a deal yet. So it's very difficult when I say to someone, well, go ahead and raise money. They go, well, okay, but I don't have a deal under contract, so I don't really have anything to talk about to an investor. I said, well, that's true. And then on the other hand, let's say I get really lucky and I actually get a deal under contract, and now you're like, oh, I don't have time to raise the money, which is also true. So, and then people kind of go, well, I don't know how to solve that. I can't solve it. I give up. The way I solve this is something called a sample deal package. Okay, sample deal package is essentially an investor package, which I can where people can actually download a sample. I'll tell you that in a second. The sample deal package is basically essentially a deal package that has everything about a deal. And it's got photos, it's got the address, it's got your business plan, it's got projections, it's got rent roll. Everything you put in there, everything is real except for one thing. You don't actually have it under contract. Okay. And now you tell people you don't have it on contract, but what you do is you use it as a tool, as a conversation tool, to now start approaching investors long before you have a deal on contract. You say, look, here's the kind of deal that I'm going to do. It's going to be substantially like this. Let's talk about this. Let me tell you about this deal. Ask me questions. I want you to get comfortable with me. With this kind of deal, let me answer your questions, address any concerns, so that when I get a real deal, when time is really short, it'll look a lot like this. It'll both in format and content, and then you can decide if you want to do that deal. But you're not going to ask me basic questions about me and my track record and my goals and my management team, and because we've already done that. So the idea is that you get verbal commitments from your investors before you put a deal under contract, and that makes a lot of sense because now you can make offers with confidence, right? If you've got two investors putting in $50,000 each, well, now you can do a sixplex, okay? I know I can put this under contract. I'm going to call my two guys up because I've already had conversations with them and say, okay, here's a real deal package. Look it over. Are you still good for $50,000 each? And it's a very short conversation, and people kind of go, yes, or whatever, right? And now you immediately have your money raised, and you can move forward. And that solves a chicken egg problem for raising money.
I should have asked this before, but can you give us a quick little framework on how to raise money, like the steps you should start out with, like maybe that first conversation all the way to closing the end of the deal?
Yeah, so the first step is to kind of create your sample deal package. That's because it's an important conversation piece. In order to do that, you need to get you need to be able to analyze a deal and put projections together, right? Which is easier than it sounds. But you have a sample deal package. Then what you do is you create a mind map, right? A mind map is basically, I think you call it your power sphere of all the people you know. And this exercise is good because a lot of people think they don't know a lot of people. But you put this mind map of all your little social circles, neighbors, coworkers, friends, church, Boy Scouts, sports, poker, whatever, right? You put all these things together and you write down a list of all these names, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how many people I actually know. And then you start intentionally having conversations with people. I mean, intentionally, like, and you're not going to call them up and ask for money, but as you speak with them, you're going to guide the conversation more towards real estate, right? Some people may not know you in the context of real estate, right? But some people might. So people know that you're flipping houses or you've been looking at apartment buildings for a while. It's okay for you to kind of take that next step and ask them for an investment. But essentially create a mind map and you start reaching out to those people with intentional conversations around real estate. Now, your goal is to get them to a meeting, to a lunch meeting or something like that. And in that lunch meeting, you focus specifically on that sample deal package, and you describe to them what the kind of investment would look like, and the parameters of that, what the hold is, what the returns are, what the risks are, and then you basically answer their questions and concerns, and the outcome really is a verbal commitment from them. So if you're saying, look, my minimum investment is $50,000, you say that up front, and when someone takes that meeting, the understanding is that they are interested in and capable of making an investment of what you said, right? So it's kind of like, I'm getting into apartment buildings. I'm looking for a minimum investment of $50,000, average annual returns around 13 or 15%. Is that something you're interested in? And if they say yes, well, presumably they are capable of doing that kind of investment. So that's what you do in the meeting. You want to get a verbal commitment from that person, and then from that point on, you stay in touch with that person on a regular basis. Maybe every month or so, you send them an update if nothing's happening. Hey, here's what's been going on. I really appreciate you, and just kind of keep them engaged as you look for deals. And when you do get a deal, like I said, you create your real deal package. You recommit that person or that persons, and sometimes things have changed and they can't do it at this time, or they decide to move forward. And at that point, then you describe to them what the process is to get the money to closing, and some of the paperwork involved.
So it seems like you're always trying to raise money, you're always trying to market, and you're always trying to look for deals. That's what it seems like that whole 3-step framework is in this process, right, Mike?
That's right.
How has your investment strategy changed over the last 5 years? What have you seen in the market to make you shift and to make you look at deals, bigger, smaller deals?
Yeah, bigger, right? Bigger deals, and there are benefits of bigger deals, and I always counsel my students to do the biggest deal you can, because there are benefits. There's economies of scale, non-recourse loans, you achieve your goals faster. It's a marginally more work to close a 50-unit deal than it is a 25-unit deal. There's benefits in going larger. The limiting factor really is fear, comfort. And then realistically, of course, how much money you can raise, right? That's a real limitation. And there's normally a progression. It doesn't make sense for someone who's got no real estate experience to pursue a 100-unit deal. And I applaud people for thinking big, but you have to couple thinking big with a certain amount of practicality and realism. So there's a progression. What I'm finding is that I focus on the first deal. I've really focused my attention on people's first deal, and I do that because repeatedly, as I interview people on my podcast, successful investors, or people who have quit their job or achieved something meaningful with multifamily, that first deal was pivotal. And what I see is that first deal sometimes takes a long time. It takes a long time, and then once that first deal is closed, the second and third deals close in rapid succession. That's my one observation. And the second of all, the second and third deal are bigger, sometimes much bigger than that first deal. So, for example, even if someone does a duplex, which doesn't appear like a big accomplishment, in my mind it is, I will push you to try for a bigger deal, but before you give up on the strategy, I will help you do a duplex deal, which sounds ridiculous, but what happens is a duplex, that second deal that they do, is not going to be a duplex. It'll probably be between a 5 and 10 unit normally. People kind of go, oh, okay, I can do a 4 or 5 unit, maybe a 10 unit. And then once they do that, the third deal after that is normally between 20 and 30, okay? and then so it's 20 to 30, and that progression is 50 to 70, and from there, at that point, the sky is the limit. So normally, you can essentially quit your job in 3 deals, maybe 4 if you start with a duplex. But if you start with a small, like 10 unit, for example, you do a 10, 25, 50, or 60 unit, you at that point, or you can be done if you want. So it's a kind of a 3, and that, like I was saying, that first deal I found is very pivotal. So I focus all of my time and attention on helping people do that first deal.
Gino, you think he's onto something?
That's really amazing. See, Jake and I took it that we have the same mind here, because that's what we did. We ended up buying a 25 unit for our first deal. 4 months later, he's sitting at where is it? Tuesdays, Ruby Tuesdays. We're inking our second deal. 4 months later, it's a 36 unit. Then 6 months after that, we inking our third deal, which is 136 units. We didn't raise any money. We just brought on partners. So whatever strategy it is, and I think it's because we just got comfortable. We knew what we wanted. The market time was good. We're lucky, but working hard and working lucky, it's the same thing to me. So it's amazing you say that, and I think that's so true with a lot of people. It's called momentum. And it's called, you got to walk before you can run. Because us as adults, we want to hit the sky before we even learn anything. And I think you've got to take your lumps. And that is so spot on what you said, because it happened to us. And, just keep growing and growing. And after the 136, we went back down to 20-something, but then we hit 281. So it's just a progression like that. And I think people, once they get into that first deal, like Jake likes to say, you either do 0 deals or you do tons of deals. There's nobody that does 1 deal. So focusing on that 1 deal it's just excellent advice. I love that advice.
Gino, plus to his earlier point, it took us 2 years to get into our first deal. He was mentioning that in the beginning as well. It was like, no one liked us. We were like the ugly girl at the dance, and no one wanted to hang out. But we finally, I guess we found some makeup, right?
But I remind people, normally you're on a 3 to 5 year retirement plan, right? So what if it takes you 2 years to do a first deal? The problem,
I agree, it's just hard because you end up like it's not going to work. You want to give up. That's the hard part.
That's exactly right. That's why you want to give up. And this is why I introduced coaching about a year ago, because I felt like even if I arm you with all the knowledge, the best knowledge in the world, you're going to probably give up at one point because you don't know any better. You need someone to put things in perspective, and I didn't know that about you. It doesn't surprise me, right? There's a lot of people, it takes them, almost 2 years to do their first deal, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open, right? So if I can explain to someone, look, there are 10 people here that took them 2 years to do a first deal, and then within weeks they did their second and third deal, and I see that constantly. So if you're on a 3 to 5 year retirement plan, so what? If it takes you 2 years, I had a guy, it took him 2 years to do his first duplex, right? Jay Boyle, and you're like, oh gosh, how can it take 2 years to do your first duplex, right? But then within weeks of that, he already had this other one under contract. It was a 32 unit. He closed on it, within 45 days, and so it took him a long time, yes. But then, like you guys, that second deal, and then he was already working on a 90 plus unit. So it really is that first deal. And if I can just help people stay the course and do that first deal, I know it'll change their life.
I think you have to find out for people exactly what their why is. If they have a strong enough why and they have enough reasons, if you have enough reasons to do something, you'll find how to do it. And if you have a strong enough why, and like I always tell Jake, your should has become your must. If you have all those elements, you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure. And what is 3 to 5 years? What's 7 years? So what if it's 7 years? If you're 40 years old and you got to wait till 47 to retire, what's the difference? It's just another number. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I totally agree with that. That's awesome. You've really scaled up in the last couple of years. Let me talk about building your systems, building your teams. How have you found, Jake always laments about contractors. I've lamented about employees also sometimes. How have you done that in your business?
Well, like I said, it really is. It's all about the quality of the people that you have around you, and it's like that in any business, even in the pizza business. It's you have a good manager in a store, that store will make money and it'll be smooth. You're not going to get phone calls versus you have a manager that is not so good or average or below average. It's really about the quality of the people, and I really do think that the quality of proper management company is a key element of that. For example, if the reporting is good in real time, everything is kind of already online, right? You can use that then for asset management purposes and put together reports, and just the way the information is provided for you, that alone makes the job a lot easier. So it really comes down to the quality of the people that you have. I mean, that's my best advice I can say about that. And if you don't, you need to make changes.
Steve
it's
Jobs.
Funny because I wanted to ask you, what was your best real estate tip? Is that your best real estate investing tip, or do you have another good tip for the listeners?
No, Well, my best investing tip is to learn to raise money. And regardless of what real estate strategy you do or any kind of business strategy, because I've raised money for restaurants as well, learn to raise money. And it is such an eye opener when you get someone who goes, yeah, all right, I'll invest $25,000 with you, and you're like, really? Huh? Now my ability to scale or achieve my goals is only limited by my ability to scale to raise money, not by my own limited resources. And so to me, that is my number one tip is to learn money, and then you can do whatever strategy you want. My second tip is, as I said before, is to be clear about your goals and then use a strategy that meets those, and really look at all the strategies in detail. And again, I early on dismissed multifamily for the reasons I just mentioned. I don't have any money, I don't have any experience. And it's actually not true, right? So people really need to look at match the strategy, and in particular, I feel strongly in real estate realm, if you actually want to retire or quit your job or passive income, there's nothing better than multifamily.
Great. Very good. Learning to sell. Hey, guys, let's take a quick commercial break.
Are you stuck on the sidelines experiencing analysis by paralysis? Are you still trying to get your first multifamily deal done? We've never met an investor who's only done one deal. People are either stuck on the sidelines or they've done multiple deals. We always say that it's education times action that equal results. You've come to the education side of the equation. Let us help you land your first deal. Call Jake and Gino today at 904-314-9473 to set up a strategy session, or email us at gino@jakeandgino.com.
Woo! Love that guy. Now back to the show. So, Michael, you've been really successful. What would you say your best habit is for your success?
So, best habit is probably around goal setting. And I've always been goal-oriented, but I think I've gotten better recently. For example, and sometimes you do things, but when you read a book, it articulates something that you've already kind of done, but it, like you said, Gino, it focuses your attention on something, and you're like, you know what, now I get it, maybe I can do something a little better, right? So you're going to read the Gary Keller book, The One Thing, which you'll ask me about my favorite book. It's not my favorite book, but it's one I read recently, and it really made an impact on me, is when you really focus on that one thing that will make everything else easier or even unnecessary, right? What is that one thing that you can be doing that will do those things, and then focusing your attention on that one thing. And if you do that repeatedly, you will achieve things that will blow your mind. So specifically with goal setting I like to use something that I now call the vision map, which is a 90-day, it incorporates a 90-day plan, so that when you're setting goals, you create it on a 90-day basis. 9 days is long enough for you to achieve something meaningful, but not long enough where a lot of things out of your control would have to happen to achieve that goal. And then mapping those things to the 3 things you need to be doing that particular week. So as things happen, and things we get, fires are burning, you have to do things. You put those 3 things per week visible so you see them and you work on them. And your goal is to knock out those 3 things. And those 3 things obviously are contributing towards your 90-day goals and your longer-term goals. And those are the hardest 3 things that you can do in every single week, because they compete with time. Their payoff is farther down the road. But you know that if you continue doing that over time, you will actually achieve things of strategic value. So being more intentional about that process, like, for example, I've been getting up now at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I never got up 6 in the morning. Hal Elrod, The Miracle Morning, kind of says, oh, now let me try that. And really being intentional about the 3 goals for the week, and then also the 3 things you want to achieve today, right? You said you cannot go to bed until you have achieved those 3 things, and even if you have to say no to some other things, those are 3 things that I have to achieve. What are they? And that's what I can kind of do early on in the morning, and that provides a lot of clarity.
So, guys, identify your 3 goals. And then make sure you're hitting steps every week that are getting you closer to those goals, and you're identifying them, and you're just being ruthless and not taking no for an answer and getting that's really good stuff. What is go ahead, Gino. Sorry, you got the life coach over here.
I like The One Thing with Gary Keller. I love the book, but what I extrapolated from that book more than anything is not even the one thing. The one thing for me is my family, right? So that's the one thing for me, and everything emanates from that. So all of my goals are towards that, whether it's spending more time with them, making money for them, and then from that I got the real estate. So that was like, I broke it out into that, and all my life coaching students, I try to tell them to focus on that. And then you work around the energy and your energy blocks around that, your limiting beliefs. Try to shatter the limiting beliefs and try to get that motivation going. But I think the one thing is, it's crucial for everybody because it's all about the focus again. And how did Gary Keller build a massive company? He always thought about that one thing, and he did blocking. He blocked out 4 hours a day to do that one thing, exactly what you're saying. So I think you're spot on.
So you talked about the professional tenant earlier. Was that your biggest mistake in business, or was that the best learning experience you had? Or are they one and the same thing?
Yeah, they really are for me.
Yeah.
They really are. It's hard to say I regret having done certain things because you always try to do the best thing with the information that you have, right? And hindsight is always 20/20. It's really not fair to say, oh, I regret doing this. And so I wouldn't say is it my biggest mistake. Well, no. Had I not done that, I wouldn't be here being able to help other people change their lives with apartment buildings, right? So it seemed like a mistake at the time, but it wasn't. The pizza restaurants now seem like a mistake in hindsight, right? But they worked well for several years, and they've turned out to be a pretty big mistake. But again, it helps me deal with difficult situations and have a certain calm around not being able to pay the IRS or make payroll this week, right? These are very stressful. And every entrepreneur deals with very stressful situations, and how do you remain calm without basically just paralyzing in fear? So even though those are mistakes now, they still, in my opinion, form who you are and make you stronger and make you a better person.
Yeah, quite the education as well. Definitely
expensive
and
education.
Painful.
College was cheap in comparison.
Did you want to share a favorite book? I know you're talking about the one thing.
Yeah, there's so many books I read constantly. It's very difficult to say, but just recently, the one thing is probably just fresh in my mind, and definitely worth a read.
Cool. You want to share your best deal and why?
Best deal and why? Well, not talking about that first deal, which turned out to be a pretty good deal, and actually I'm having it on a contract for sale for almost twice as what I bought for. So I guess you could say that's a good deal.
East Coast appreciation.
Well, the rents were under market, right?
Yeah.
And it's a Section 8 thing. So converting them to Section 8 tenants from market and raising the rents obviously increases the value of the building. And this is what I just love about multifamily is that you have a certain amount of influence over the value of the building. So you buy a building that's underperforming for various different reasons, you make it perform better, and now you have increased the value of the building. And this is why I love multifamily. With house flips, you're driven by the market, which if you're doing a 6-month flip isn't really that big of a deal, but in the recession it was, right? So no one really plans for the market turning in a 6-month time frame, and a lot of people were left holding the bag. You don't even think about that, right? So I've had some really good house flip deals as well. So I don't want to discount that as well. But
what projects are you excited about right now?
So I'm really excited. Again, I'm still looking for my own multifamily deals. I love the art of the deal. I always have. I love raising money, putting a team in place, and creating value. I love that. But I am really jazzed about. I get really excited when I hear someone do their first deal. I get really excited when someone gets their first commitment of $50,000 from an investor. I get very excited when someone actually quits their job to become a full-time investor. And so I'm starting to measure my success in a number of units I'm helping other people buy. And maybe even to the detriment of the number of units I accumulate myself. It really jazzes me up. So I'm looking for ways to help students do their deals faster, to get their deals faster done, and arming them with things that helps them overcome the money raising, maybe the proof of funds things, their credibility. What can I do to make them look way more experienced than they already are, so that they can get their first deal done faster? So that's what I'm really excited about.
Shortening that learning curve. And I think we covered some actionable stuff today, especially when you were talking about the sample deal package. That was really cool. It helps people, get towards that verbal commitment. So when the deal does present itself, they're going to be that much closer. You were discussing about sharing it with your inner circle, and then setting the minimum investment and then the return, and then continuing to update those people. So it's great when we bring folks on and they can share actionable content, so people can take that back and apply that to their current investment situation. So that was really cool. Thank you for that.
Cool.
What's the best way for listeners to get a hold of you, and what things are you working on for the education side of stuff right now?
Yeah, my website is themichaelblank.com. So it's THE Michael BLANK, themichaelblank.com. I have a ton of free resources. I have videos. I have a podcast. I have blog articles, and I guess a continuation of this conversation about raising money. You might want to download the free ebook called "The Secret to Raising Money to Buy Your First Apartment Building," and it's themichaelblank.com/ebook. Or just go to themichaelblank.com. It's on the first page. And in the appendix, by the way, we talk more about the process of raising money, but in the appendix is actually an example sample deal package, so you can see exactly what that looks like. So that might be a good idea for listeners to take in the next step if they're interested in multifamily and raising money.
Yeah, I think that based on just our conversation now and the experience that Gino and I have, I think for anyone in trying to get started, that sounds like a great option for them for sure. So
Yeah.
that's all I have today. Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Mike, thanks, Mike.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on the show.
Our pleasure. Talk to you soon.